Hi, my name is Helen, and I never imagined that grief could teach such a brutal lesson. The morning my husband William was laid to rest, Davenport felt unusually quiet, too quiet, as if the world itself had paused out of respect. I stood in front of the mirror, adjusting my black scarf for the third time. My hands trembled, not just from sorrow, but from something deeper, an ache that had no words. William had been my partner for 40 years. We built everything together, our home, our business, and our son's future. Now, all that remained was a stack of condolence cards on the kitchen table and his untouched coffee cup beside the sink. The faint lipstick mark I'd left on the rim yesterday morning stared back at me like a ghost of my old life. At 8:30 a.m., I picked up the phone and called my son. "David," I said softly, "the funeral starts at 11. Please make sure you're ready. Your father would want you there early." Loud music thumped through the receiver. Pop songs, laughter, Olivia's voice somewhere in the background yelling about decorations. Then came David's groggy tone. "Mom, I told you last night. Olivia's birthday party is today. We've been planning it for months." For a moment, I didn't understand what I'd just heard. "David," I whispered, "your father's funeral is today." "I know, Mom," he sighed, as if I were the unreasonable one. "But Dad's gone, and Olivia's birthday comes once a year. We've got the caterers coming, the band setting up. There's no way we can cancel everything now. You understand, right?" I froze. I could hear the clinking of glasses and the hum of people laughing behind him. My heart sank so fast it almost hurt to breathe. After a few seconds, I managed to say quietly, "Your father raised you for 35 years, David. He would have wanted you here." He hesitated, then simply said, "Mom, you'll be okay. I'll call you later." And then came the click. Just like that, silence. For a long while, I stood there holding the phone, staring at the clock on the wall. 8:47 a.m. The same clock William had repaired so many times because it always ran 2 minutes low. Now, even its ticking felt like mockery. At the church, people kept asking, "Where's David?" I kept my answers polite, practiced. He had important commitments. The words tasted like ash in my mouth. As the pastor spoke about eternal love and family bonds, I felt something inside me crack, not from grief, but from realization. There I was, a widow standing beside my husband's casket, surrounded by neighbors, church friends, even William's old co-workers, but not our son. The empty space beside me was heavier than the coffin itself. When the first shovel of dirt hit the polished wood, I flinched. It sounded too final, too cold. I whispered under my breath, "Rest now, William. You did your part. I'll handle the rest." Driving home, I kept both hands clenched on the steering wheel. The passenger seat beside me, his seat, felt impossibly empty. Davenport streets passed like a blur, the same streets where William had taught David to ride a bike, where we'd walked every Sunday to the farmer's market, where our family had once been whole. By the time I reached home, the house felt larger than ever. The silence wasn't peaceful. It was accusing. I hung my keys on the hook, his hook, the one he'd installed, and stood there for a long moment, feeling the echo of a life that used to be filled with laughter. That night, I didn't cry. Grief had turned into something colder, sharper, a feeling I didn't recognize yet. But deep down, I knew one thing. The woman who had left home that morning to bury her husband was not the same woman who had returned. She was no longer just a widow. She was a mother who had finally opened her eyes. The next morning, sunlight slipped quietly through the lace curtains of our bedroom, landing on William's side of the bed, untouched, still neatly made. The pillow held the faint shape of his head, and for a split second, I almost called out his name. Then reality returned like a cold draft. I sat up slowly and looked around. Every inch of the room was a museum of our life together. The wedding photo on the dresser, his watch still on the nightstand, the framed picture of David at his college graduation, the one William was so proud of. He'd worked 16-hour days for years to pay that tuition. In the kitchen, the air was heavy with stillness. William's coffee mug was where I'd left it, the side of folded napkin, and the unopened newspaper. The smallest things felt unbearable. I poured myself a cup of coffee, but it tasted hollow, like something vital was missing. That's when I noticed the stack of old file boxes near the dining room wall. William had labeled everything carefully: David, college; David, house; David, wedding. I hesitated, but something inside me, maybe pain, maybe instinct, made me open them. The first folder held David's report cards, each one neatly signed by William. In the margins, my husband had written notes like, "He's brilliant," or "We're proud of you, son." My eyes blurred as I flipped through them. Those little pieces of paper carried decades of sacrifice. Then came the invoices: tuition fees, car payments, house down payments. William had recorded every expense down to the cent. I sat down with a notepad and started adding them up. 4 years of college, $52,000 per year. Graduate school, $48,000. Car, $35,000. Wedding and honeymoon, $75,000. The down payment for his house, $350,000. And countless emergencies over the years: repairs, vacations, business investments. When I finished the list, the total stopped my breath: $250,000. $250,000, our savings, our retirement, the fruit of 40 years of labor, all given willingly, lovingly. And yet, at William's funeral, our son couldn't bother to show up. A wave of nausea rolled over me. My hands began to shake. For years, we told ourselves that we were helping him build his future. But maybe what we were really building was his sense of entitlement. I stood up and walked to the living room, the memories pressing down from every direction. The couch where we'd spent Christmas mornings together. The old rug William had insisted on keeping because it feels like home. The bookshelves lined with photo albums that told a story of love, sacrifice, and, now I realized, blindness. I pulled out the family photo from the mantel, William and me standing behind David and Olivia on their wedding day. I stared at the picture until my throat tightened. We looked so proud back then. We had no idea what was coming. That evening, I sat in William's armchair with his old reading glasses perched on my nose. The house creaked softly, like it was breathing around me. For the first time, I allowed myself to admit it. We hadn't just lost William. Somewhere along the way, I had lost David too. But not anymore. The next time my son called asking for help, and I knew he would, he wasn't going to find the same mother he once could guilt into anything. This time, he was going to meet Helen, not the woman who sacrificed silently, but the one who had finally remembered her own worth. The phone rang early the next morning, 8:15 a.m. sharp. I didn't need to check the caller ID. Somehow, I already knew it was David. "Morning, Mom," he said, cheerful as if nothing had happened. "How are you holding up after the funeral?" His voice was smooth, familiar, the same tone he used whenever he wanted something. "I'm managing," I replied evenly, though I could feel my pulse quickening. "Good, good," he said. "Listen, I hate to bring this up so soon, but we're in a bit of a bind. Olivia went a little overboard with her birthday party. You know how she is, and now the bills are, well, they're piling up. The band, the steakhouse, the decorations, it all added up quicker than we expected." I stayed silent. The sound of my own heartbeat filled the pause. "So," he continued lightly, "we just need a small favor. About $20,000 should cover it. I'll pay you back soon, I promise." I nearly laughed. It wasn't humor, it was disbelief. Yesterday, he had chosen champagne and confetti over his father's funeral, and today he was asking for money to pay for that same party. "David," I said slowly, "your father was buried yesterday." "Mom," he replied with a sigh, "don't do this. I'm trying to be responsible. We just need a little help to get through this month." A cold clarity washed over me. This wasn't grief speaking, it was routine. For years, every phone call from my son had ended with a $sign. William had once called it the price of love. But I was done paying. "No," I said quietly. There was a stunned silence on the other end. "What do you mean, no?" he asked, his voice rising. "Is something wrong with the bank? Because I really need it today." I said no, David. I repeated firmly. There will be no more money. Not for parties, not for bills, not for anything. For a few seconds, he didn't respond. Then his tone hardened, sharp and unfamiliar. Unbelievable, he snapped. Dad just died, and you're acting like this? You know he'd want you to help us. He would have wanted you at his funeral? I said, my voice steady. That ended the call. The silence that followed was different this time. Not empty, not painful, but powerful. The house felt lighter, as though it finally exhaled. I set the phone down and stared at William's picture on the mantel. I did it, Will, I whispered. For the first time, I said no. In that moment, I didn't feel weak. I felt free. And I had no idea that this single word, no, was about to change everything that came next. The following week, I arrived at Foster Construction 2 hours earlier than usual. The morning air in Davenport carried a chill, but inside me, something felt stronger, almost electric. William and I had built this company from the ground up. Every brick, every contract, every client had come from years of sweat and trust. But lately, that trust had been abused, mostly by our own son. As I stepped into the lobby, employees greeted me with soft condolences and careful smiles. I thanked them politely, but my mind was elsewhere. I walked straight to my office, turned on the desk lamp, and opened the personnel files William used to keep locked away. There it was, David Foster, project manager. My son's record was a disaster in disguise. Missed deadlines, inflated expense reports, complaints from contractors about his lack of supervision. I flipped through page after page of excuses he'd gotten away with because William had always said, he just needs time to mature. Well, time had run out. I buzzed Julia Reed, our HR director, to come to my office. Julia had worked with us for more than 10 years. She was loyal, discreet, and observant. When she walked in, her expression told me she already knew why she'd been called. Julia, I said, my voice calm but firm, I want you to process the termination paperwork for David. Effective immediately. Her eyes softened, as if she'd been waiting for this day. Are you sure, Mrs. Foster? Yes, I said without hesitation. Completely. She nodded and took out her tablet. I'll handle everything properly. Security escort. Standard procedure, I replied. No exceptions. Once she left, I practiced what I'd say to David in front of the mirror. I didn't want anger to cloud my words, only professionalism. Today wasn't about punishment. It was about boundaries that should have been set years ago. At 9:30 a.m., right on schedule, David strolled into the office, 15 minutes late, holding a coffee and laughing with the receptionist. He looked relaxed, confident, as if nothing in his world could go wrong. When the intercom buzzed, I pressed the button. David, please come to my office immediately. He chuckled through the hallway. Sure, Mom, just give me a second. Now, David, I said, my tone leaving no room for delay. The footsteps that followed were slower, heavier. When he entered and saw Julia Reed standing near my desk with papers in her hands, the color drained from his face. What's going on? He asked, forcing a nervous laugh. I folded my hands on the table. David, your employment with Foster Construction is terminated, effective immediately. He stared at me, confused. You're kidding, right? This is a professional decision, I said, based on your performance and conduct. His laugh turned sharp. Come on, Mom. What's this really about? Because I asked for some help? You're firing your own son. I slid the documents across the table. Please review and sign where indicated. He picked up the pen, then threw it down. You can't be serious. This is Dad's company, our family business. This is my company now, I corrected him, meeting his eyes. And family or not, everyone follows the same standards. The silence that followed was so deep I could hear the clock ticking behind me. When I pressed the intercom, Jack Foster, our head of security, entered. Jack, please escort Mr. Foster to gather his personal belongings. David's voice cracked as he looked between us. Mom, don't do this. Dad wouldn't want. Your father believed in responsibility, I interrupted quietly. You've had enough chances to prove you share that belief. You didn't. He froze for a long moment, then turned toward the door. Jack followed him out. Through the glass walls, I watched my son, the same boy I once carried in my arms, walk down the hallway, humiliated and furious. Employees looked away politely, pretending not to see. When the door finally closed behind him, I felt the weight of 40 years lift from my chest. It wasn't triumph. It was clarity. For the first time, I wasn't acting as someone's mother. I was acting as someone's leader. And this time, leadership meant letting go. By the next afternoon, word had already spread through the company like wildfire. No one said it aloud, but everyone knew. The owner's son had been escorted out by security. I sat in my office reviewing contracts when the receptionist's voice came over the intercom. "Mrs. Foster, your daughter-in-law, Olivia, is here. She says it's urgent." My stomach tightened. "Send her in." The door burst open before I finished the sentence. Olivia stormed in, heels clicking sharply against the floor, her perfume flooding the room. Her hair was perfect, her expression anything but. "How dare you humiliate David like that?" she demanded. "You had him walked out of his own father's company, like a criminal." I didn't flinch. "Sit down, Olivia." "I'll stand," she snapped, folding her arms. "You've gone too far. David has been under so much stress since William passed away. He made mistakes, sure, but he's your son." "Exactly," I said quietly. "My son, which is why I expected better from him." Olivia's eyes narrowed. "Do you even hear yourself? You're punishing your family because you're lonely and bitter. You've lost your husband, and now you want to make everyone else miserable too." I stayed calm, letting her words hang in the air until they lost their strength. "Olivia," I said slowly, "I have tolerated your tone for years because William always believed in keeping peace. But that peace is over. You've treated me with disrespect, and you've taken advantage of our generosity. That ends now." She slammed her handbag on my desk. "You owe us, Helen. We've been part of this family business since the beginning. We deserve severance pay, at least 6 months. David worked here for 8 years. David was an at-will employee," I said firmly. "No severance is required, nor will any be offered." Her mouth fell open. "Are you serious right now?" Before she could say more, I pressed the security button. Jack Foster appeared at the doorway almost instantly. "Please escort Mrs. Olivia Foster out of the building," I instructed. Her face turned red with rage. "This isn't over, Helen," she shouted as Jack gently guided her out. "William would be ashamed of you. You're nothing but a bitter old woman taking out her pain on your family." The words stung, not because they were true, but because I realized how easily she used William's memory as a weapon. When the door closed and silence filled the room again, I took a deep breath. My hands trembled slightly, but not from fear, from release. I looked at the photo of William on my desk, his calm smile, his kind eyes. "You were too gentle with them, Will," I whispered. "You always believed love would fix everything. But love without boundaries turns into chains." Outside, I could see employees pretending to work, whispering in low tones. I didn't care. For the first time, I wasn't trying to protect an image or preserve a false peace. I spent the rest of the day making quiet phone calls, first to our board president, Frank Peterson, then to our family attorney, Michael Stone. Each conversation was short but clear. "I want everything reviewed. All contracts. All accounts. Every document David had access to." By the time I drove home, the weight on my chest had lifted. The sky over Davenport was glowing pink and gold, a soft reminder that endings could still be beautiful. That evening, I poured myself a cup of tea and sat in William's favorite chair. The house was quiet, but for the first time it wasn't suffocating. It was peaceful, earned peace. I had drawn a line, and I had kept it. But deep down, I knew this was only the beginning. The real test would come when I rewrote not just my life, but the legacy William and I had built together. And I was ready. 2 days after the confrontation with Olivia, I drove downtown to the law offices of Michael Stone and Associates, the same firm William and I had trusted for decades. The elevator ride felt long, quiet, and symbolic. I was going there not as a widow seeking comfort, but as a woman ready to rewrite the story of her life. When Michael greeted me, he looked genuinely concerned. "Helen, I was so sorry to hear about William. How are you holding up?" I smiled faintly. "I'm holding up fine, Michael. But I didn't come here to talk about grief. I came to talk about business." He nodded slowly. "Of course. You mentioned on the phone you wanted to make changes to your estate plan?" "Yes," I said. "I want to remove David completely. Everything that William and I built, the company, the savings, the properties, I want it all transferred to something meaningful. Something that honors William's memory." Michael leaned back in his chair, surprised. "Are you sure you want to go that far?" "I've never been more certain," I said. "I'm creating the William Foster Memorial Foundation to fund scholarships for hardworking students and to support cancer research. Every dollar will go toward causes that reflect who William truly was." Michael studied my expression, realizing that my mind was made up. "Then we'll proceed carefully," he said. Over the next hour, we reviewed every document: the business ownership papers, property deeds, and insurance policies. By the time I was done signing, David Foster was legally removed from every part of my estate. His name existed only in the past, not the future. When Michael asked about notifying him, I replied calmly, "Yes, send him formal notice. Let him see what his greed has cost him." We also created a trust fund in my name, one David could never access or challenge. The foundation would take ownership of the company after my death, ensuring the money built through 40 years of hard work would never again be squandered by selfish hands. When the signing ceremony was complete, Michael shook his head slightly, half in awe. "You've just secured your husband's legacy forever, Helen," he said. "I didn't do it for legacy," I answered softly. "I did it for peace." That evening, I walked through the house with a lightness I hadn't felt in months. Every corner seemed to breathe easier. The walls no longer echoed with disappointment or debt, only with memories of love and purpose. In William's study, I placed the official seal of the foundation next to his photo. His smile seemed to glow under the lamplight. "It's done, my love," I whispered. "You'll keep helping people, even when we're both gone." Then, I sat down at his desk, wrote in my journal, and signed the final line like a quiet promise to myself. Today, I stopped being someone's safety net. Today, I became my own strength. I closed the book gently, knowing that the next chapter of my life, one built on dignity, self-respect, and justice, had finally begun. For a few weeks, everything was quiet. Too quiet. I knew that silence was temporary, the kind that comes right before a storm. It didn't take long. By the end of the month, whispers started circulating in Davenport's tight social circles. The same people who'd attended William's memorial were now talking about David's absence, and his reason for it. I hadn't said a word publicly, but truth has a strange way of surfacing on its own. At the country club, where William and I had been longtime members, a close friend, Frank Peterson, the board president, approached me during lunch. "Helen," he said quietly, "we've all been wondering, why didn't David come to the funeral?" I looked him straight in the eyes. "Because it was Olivia's birthday party that day." He said, "You can't bring the dead back, but a birthday comes only once a year." Frank's fork froze halfway to his mouth. The surrounding table went silent. Within hours, the story spread across the club, through the bridge circles, the church gatherings, and every coffee shop in town. By the weekend, David and Olivia's perfect social image had collapsed. Their friends stopped calling. Restaurant reservations mysteriously vanished. The same boutique that used to greet Olivia by name now told her politely that her account had been suspended. The final blow came when David's golf group at the club unintentionally forgot to include him in their weekend game. By the time he realized what was happening, it was too late. His reputation, built on borrowed respect and inherited privilege, had been shredded by his own words. Meanwhile, I continued managing my company with quiet strength. The William Foster Memorial Foundation launched its first scholarship program. Seeing young students from working families receive opportunities William once dreamed of giving made every sacrifice worth it. One morning, as I enjoyed coffee in the garden, the phone rang. It was Andrew Collins, the bank manager. "Mrs. Foster," he said cautiously, "David's mortgage is 60 days overdue. You're still listed as guarantor. Would you like to cover the payment?" I took a slow sip of coffee before replying, "No, Andrew. In fact, I'd like to remove my guarantee effective immediately." There was silence on the other end. "Are you sure? That could lead to foreclosure proceedings." "I'm very sure," I said. Actions have consequences, and it's time he learned that. Within weeks, foreclosure notices began appearing in David and Olivia's mailbox. Their credit cards were frozen. Their car, a luxury SUV William had co-signed for, was repossessed in front of their neighbors. They had laughed at me once. Now the laughter had gone quiet. Across town, people whispered that karma had done its work. But I knew better. It wasn't karma. It was clarity. That night, I sat beside William's photo and whispered softly, "Justice doesn't always come in courtrooms, my love. Sometimes it comes in silence, through the weight of one's own actions." The next morning, I woke up lighter. Davenport was bathed in golden sunlight, and for the first time in years, I felt at peace, not because David was suffering, but because I had finally chosen myself. 6 months later, Davenport felt different. Quieter, more peaceful. The trees along the streets had started to turn golden, and the days had that crisp coolness that comes before winter. I walked through the morning sunshine toward Riverside Cemetery, carrying a small bouquet of white daisies, William's favorite flowers. As I reached his grave, I knelt down and brushed away a few fallen leaves from the polished headstone. "Good morning, my love," I whispered softly. "The Foundation's first year has ended. 20 scholarships awarded. $200,000 donated to cancer research. You'd be proud." The sunlight caught the engraved words, "A life of integrity and love." For the first time, I truly felt them. A few hours later, I stopped by Morning Glory Diner for breakfast. The waitress guided me to a booth by the window, and as I set down my purse, I froze. Behind the counter, wiping tables in a faded uniform, was David. He looked older, thinner, worn down, humbled. His once perfect posture had softened into something human. When he turned and our eyes met, the shock on his face was immediate. "Mom," he said quietly, walking over. "I didn't think you'd ever come here." "I didn't think I'd ever see you working either," I replied evenly, though not cruelly. He gave a sad smile. "Yeah, well, life changes fast when the money runs out." I studied his face. There was no arrogance left, only fatigue, and maybe, for the first time, honesty. "I'm sorry," he said, voice trembling. "I know that word doesn't fix anything, but I mean it. I was wrong about everything, about Dad, about you, about what mattered." I nodded slowly. "You hurt your father deeply, David. You took from us again and again, even when we had nothing left to give." He swallowed hard. "I know, and I'll regret it for the rest of my life." Silence hung between us, not angry, just heavy. Then he said something I didn't expect. "It was never about the money, was it? You just wanted me to care." I met his eyes. "Yes. That's all your father ever wanted." He wiped his eyes with the back of his sleeve. "Is there any way back? Any way to fix this?" I hesitated before answering. "I don't know. Maybe someday. But words won't do it, David. You'll have to show me through your actions." He nodded. "Then I'll try." I paid for my coffee and left a generous tip. As I stood to leave, I noticed David watching me from behind the counter, not with anger, but with quiet understanding. For the first time, I saw my son, not the man who had hurt me. Driving home, I passed the house that used to be his, now filled with laughter from a young family who had bought it through the foundation. The garden was blooming again, the same way it did when William tended it. I smiled softly. The cycle had closed. That evening, I returned home, cooked a small dinner, and set the table for one. But this time, there was no sadness, only peace. My life wasn't empty. It was full of purpose. Before bed, I walked into the garden and pruned the rose bushes under the soft glow of the porch light. The air was cool, and for the first time in 2 long years, I felt truly free. I looked up at the stars and whispered, "It's finished, William." Justice was done. And love, real love, survived. Then I went inside, turned off the lights, and for the first time in decades, slept with a calm heart. After everything I've been through, I've learned that sometimes love means walking away to protect your own peace. If my story touched your heart, tell me, if you were in my place, would you have forgiven your son? Share your thoughts in the comments below. I truly want to know what you think. And before you go, don't forget to subscribe to my channel for more powerful real-life stories like mine. Your support means the world to me.